All right, so welcome back to the CINDERS Foundation, Fundamental Strength Training for Mental Health. In this video, we're going to go over the horizontal push pattern. And when I say horizontal, I'm talking as if I was standing upright. Anything where I'm pushing out in front of me like this as opposed to straight vertically overhead. The real differentiator for me in terms of what is a horizontal press versus what is a vertical press is basically anything that's not straight vertical is a horizontal press. So whether that's slightly down, slightly up, really what that means is the chest being activated or not. In a straight vertical press, it's all shoulders. And in a horizontal press, it's more chest and some shoulders. So whether or not chest activation is involved is what's the determining factor for me. So some of the very basic things that we have with push motions, we have push-ups, hands elevated or not. Or if your feet are elevated, it's still a horizontal press, engaging your chest. Other movements we have are things like your incline bench press. You can do that with dumbbells or barbells. So that looks a little something like this, coming down and pressing up. And then we also have things like dips with parallel bars, where you're sinking down like this, coming back up. That hits a lot of chest as well. And then lastly, we have things like the bench press, where you have a barbell across the rack here. You're laying on your back and you're pressing up. Before we get into the barbell bench press, which is how we're going to end this video, just to explain the nuances of that particular lift. Most of those nuances can apply to any other horizontal pressing movement. But in particular, with the bench press, there are some strength techniques that can be particularly useful to take advantage of to load the most and have the best technique so that you're getting the most out of the exercise. But essentially, with a horizontal press, it's anything where our elbow is traveling in front of our body, from back to front, engaging our chest, and we're using all of a whole bunch of different muscle groups. Okay, so compound lift, as we've talked about before, is multiple joints moving in tandem. So we have our shoulder and our elbow moving, and that's our multiple joints. Just kind of like with a squat, we have our knees and our hips moving. It's the same concept with our pressing, and that's why it's a compound movement as opposed to some isolation movement where we're moving one joint at a time. These give us a lot of bang for our buck in terms of hormone production, muscle building, and all those things. We can load them really heavy. So it's important to master these particular movements. I think it's just important to handle all basic fundamental strength training compound movement patterns. Anyway, so as we jump into the bench press, and really any pressing movement that we're going to do, one of the important things to do is to engage your upper back and pull your shoulder blades down. So one of the things that you're going to see is a mistake a lot of people will make is being up here and being out here and having their shoulders in front of them. Ultimately, what we want to try to do is pull ourselves into good posture, which is going to be shoulders down and our elbows down. Basically, you just don't want to flare out here. It just puts a lot of stress on the joint, which again isn't necessarily bad. But under the loads you're able to do with the bench press, you can do way more load here than you can here. And this is going to be a more compromised and dangerous position than here. So ultimately what we want to do, our cues for the bench press are going to be, we want our shoulder blades together and down. I actually struggle. My right one tends to float up, so I have to really focus on that. Back and down. And then we're going to press out of that position. Just brings a nice solid base. And then again, don't want our elbows out. We want those tucked. And it's kind of whatever feels comfortable that's not here. So, some people are a little tighter in here. I think it's somewhere probably about 45. That tends to be the most beneficial. And it's going to vary depending on where your grip is. With the bench press, what I like to shoot for is that if I want to keep my hands essentially straight up and down when I'm doing the pressing. So as I'm laying on my back, my arms are going to stay straight up and down as opposed to being in or out. There's actually value in all of them. So if you bench press with your hands wider, you have a little bit more of a W shape to you when you're at the bottom. You're going to hit more chest. And as you're in tighter, you're going to hit more triceps. So again, it's all just variations of the same fundamental concept. But ultimately, I find that I'm the strongest when I'm stacked straight over the top of my arm like this, and I can drive out. It's kind of the right happy medium for me to play around with it and figure out what works best for you. As long as you're not in an extreme in one direction or the other, you'll probably be very strong there. You'll figure out what you like the best. So again, shoulder blades back and down. We're not flaring our elbows. And then we're going to press. And we're going to maintain that position the whole time. A couple other things that are interesting to note with the bench press is there's something called leg drive, where really what that means is you're not using your legs to bench, but you're using your legs to anchor yourself into the bench. And so the way that that works, I'm not going to be able to do it with 45 pounds as well as I could with a little bit more weight, but I'll explain that as well. And so the idea is that you're going to arch your back. To be a technical power lift, you have to have your butt on the bench. So usually what I do is I'll arch my back and then I'll set my butt down from there to give me just a really good strong position. And you're going to kind of wedge yourself between the bar and the bench. So you're going to push your body up while you're pushing into the bar, and it's going to kind of wedge you in between. So just to kind of show this real quick, we come down, I find my position, which again is roughly here for me. And then I can tell by where my hands hit the knurling and the notches in the knurling. And so what I'm going to do is I start with a big arch. So I first get my shoulder blades in the position so they're back and down. I usually have the bar like right over my eyes before I do my arch, give or take. You kind of figure out what works best for you. But I do a big arch, get my shoulders in position, and you can see I'm pushing with my legs here. And then I lift the bar up, and then I slowly go down to touch my butt on the bench. Now I'm really tight, my upper back is tight, everything's feeling really good. And right now I can deliver a lot of force into here. There's not a lot of instability, there's a lot of stability. And when the bar is heavier right here, I can push even harder because I'm not gonna slide up the bench with the weight up here. So I'm kind of wedging myself in here and I'm pushing myself back. So the motion that I'm doing that wouldn't happen if I had more weight on here is this, right? So you're wedging yourself in between the bar and pushing yourself up. And that's what leg drive is essentially. And so the reason we do that is to give a really solid, stable base. It helps you press more weight, which is helpful. You'll see some people put their legs up when benching and doing things like that. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but I haven't found a reason to do that seems to make sense. That's giving you less stability. The analogy I always hear is like, it's like shooting a cannon out of a boat, right? If it's an unstable base, the cannon, it's not going to shoot very hard. It needs to be on a stable foundation on the ground in order for it to deliver the most force, which is what we want to do on a big compound lift like a bench press anyway. We want to be delivering a lot of force. If I wanted instability introduced into that movement, I would use dumbbells because you get a little bit more instability in the sense that your hands aren't tied to one object. There's a little bit more play. That just seems to be way more useful as far as having an instability component and getting the actual adaptations I want anyway from instability as opposed to instability with the bar. There's probably a use for legs up barbell bench press, but I find that if I want a bench press, I want to be really stable. I want to move a lot of weight. And if I want instability, I try different movements. And so that's the horizontal press, one of our core compound movement patterns.